Alrighty. Hello, everybody. I hope you're doing well. The title for tonight's teaching, for today's teaching, depending on when you're tuning in, is Roots and Rocks. Some of the verses, hopefully, we'll get to. It's Romans 11, verses 16 through 18, and 1 Corinthians 10, verses 1 through 4. And the date is June the 9th, 2022. June the 9th. Wow. Oh, look at that. Hey, Renee. Timing is everything. Just got in from garden. Woo. Well, thank you for tuning in, Renee. And when Dee tunes in, if she is, whatever, she will be here at some point. Her and all of her people. So thank you for joining. And the other people that will give this a watch, I thank you and I say hello to you. I hope you have a wonderful day. Yeah, I would think so. So let's just get right into this, and we'll just see where it takes us. I mean, now I do have my notes aren't notes; they're verses, but we'll see where we go. This could be a fun one. Well, hopefully it will be, because I like doing these. So, Roots and Rocks. When you first hear the title, when you hear a root, I think I'm going to say root. Um, when you hear a root, the word root, do you connect with it good things or bad things? Thank you. I typically, uh, it's of my opinion that a majority of people would uh, connect, at least from a um, um, that have a religious background. I believe a majority would connect bad. Renee says good. That just tickles my heart. Um, because you think of laying the axe to this root, and you have bad stuff going on in your life, and let's get to the root of it, the root of the evil that is going on. And so maybe it's just me. Maybe, maybe I um, have a slant on that to be able to say when root is talked about, that from a church, from a biblical, from a Bible religious standpoint, I can come up with more examples of the root being negative than positive. Should it be that way? I don't think so. I because there is a negative connection with it, um, as well as a positive one, and hopefully you'll see that we'll cover more of the positive side of things on this teaching. Just like rock. You think of rock, I think um, a majority would, the thought that comes to mind when you hear rock is the person who builds their house on a rock. Um, maybe uh, when God takes Moses and hides him in the cleft of the rock. You could look at uh, when Moses hits the rock and the water comes out, and that water then is for all of the people that he led out of Egypt. And then the second time he was supposed to speak to the rock, instead he smacks it, I think twice, and which just isn't a good thing. Um, but again, um, my mind, my thoughts when we're talking about a rock tend to go more towards they picked up stones, they picked up rocks to stone the person. Uh, you've got Stephen or Stephen, I think it's Stephen is how it's pronounced, but either way, um, he's stoned to death. And while this is happening, uh, he looks up and he sees God. And so there's a lot of negative, and maybe it is since Renee, good things, and bravo Renee, because good things should be what we connect with it, because that's when our brain is wired. It um, the firm foundation came to my mind. Yes. Yep. See, because that's, yeah, when it is, when you're in a tree, if it's roots that go down deep, you have this firm foundation. So then the tree can withstand storms. And that's how we should be. Should we get into this now? Um, there was a comment about in life, one of the things that um, we should do is uh, work on and use the word, work. It's okay. It's not a dirty word. It's okay. If we work to um, go deeper, yeah, dig those, push those roots that we have deeper to be able to get this firm foundation, this strong foundation, this foundation that uh, this root system that goes to find the water to be able to get the nutrients. And how is your root system? Do you have to lay an axe to it? Should somebody else be laying an axe to it to cut it off at the root? And when you fix a problem, when you deal with a problem that's in your life and then it keeps coming back, sometimes the solution is to go to the root of the problem, because you're dealing with the symptom, not the root. And once you can deal with the root, then it's you're not going to have to deal with that anymore. And so we talked some about really driving these roots down deeper. You'll drive your roots down deeper. And I want to disagree with that. I don't think you should. Nope. I mean, you can, obviously. I mean, you have the right to, but I think there's a better option. So let's get into these verses then. Now, with that being said, and I won't add to that anymore, other than I don't think you should drive your roots down further. I don't believe that you should take your roots and get them more firm in the foundation that you're in. Now, could we go down that way and could I have a teaching about that? Yeah, I could, but that's not this one. Our first verse for tonight is found in Revelation. And now understand. Let's go right to it. It's the last book, so we're way at the end. I'll show you something. Let's see. This Bible that I have has 4 different translations. The one I typically use is the NASB, which is the 1995. Revelation begins with the revelation of Jesus Christ. That's what it says in the King James as well. The revelation of Jesus Christ. The NIV, which the majority of churches at least used to, if not still do, use the NIV. So the New International Version. This is the revelation of Jesus Christ. So, when you're reading the book of Revelation, or when you are hearing somebody talk about it, make sure that you keep it in the context that it is the revelation of Jesus Christ. So Revelation 22:16 says, I, Jesus, have sent my angel to testify to you these things for the churches. I am the root and the descendant of David, the bright morning star. So here Jesus calls himself the root. So my statement from before of don't drive your roots deep, how about you have faith and you believe that Jesus is your root system instead? You might be better off. Now let's look at rock. Psalm 18 verse 2 says, the Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my rock, in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. So there is this rock being this foundation, this immovable, this solid ground. Psalm 92:15 says, to declare that the Lord is upright. He is my rock, and there is no unrighteousness in him. So that works. Oh, very good. I like that, Renee. Isaiah 26:4 says, trust in the Lord forever, for in God the Lord we have an everlasting rock. So that works. So if you want to make your life about you, if you want to make your life about you, then you better keep working. And I use the word work in that sense uh, as in a negative standpoint because it's up to you then. So now you're the one that needs to spread out your roots and try to find ground that you can stabilize yourself in. Or believe what it says in Revelation 22:16 that Jesus says, I am the root. And then we go with that and say, my faith is that my root system is Christ. If you think that you need to lay an axe to a root in my life, you might want to double check that. You might really should be questioning your motives and actions and reasons and probably reconsider. Now, does that mean that we shouldn't do that? Apparently, that's a question to be asked another day. So, roots and rocks. Now, it doesn't quite sound like it really fits, but it does. There's some good stuff in this chunk here. We're going to read Matthew chapter 13. And a lot of the verses from verse 3 all the way through 23. I'm going to skip some, read them to make sure I'm not missing something, but keep in mind we're talking about roots and rocks, and this one really speaks to, well, we'll just get into it. And when I read this now, I have rearranged some of the verses. Because how this is set up is verses 3 through 9, Jesus speaks this parable. And then 10, 11, and 12, he's talking. And then, or 10 through 17, he's chatting. And then 18 through 23, he reveals what the parable is talking about. So what I did was I took the verses in 3 through 9 and broke them out and said, okay, this verse is talking about this thing. And then I went down into verses 18 through 23 and I found out where it was that he was explaining. And I took that verse or verses and put it up next to it. So we do start, verse 18 says, hear then the parable of the sower. And verse 3, and he spoke many things to them in parables, saying, behold, the sower went out to sow. There, I've set the stage. Okay. Now here's verse 4. So here's the parable. And as he sowed, some seeds fell beside the road, and the birds came and ate them up. Okay, fair enough. You see it? You get that picture in your mind? Somebody has a bag over their shoulder, whatever, that has a whole bunch of seed in it. And, well, you might picture it differently. This is how I picture it. Has a bunch of seeds in it. and they reach down in with their hand and they grab a bunch of seeds and then they're dispersing the seeds. Some seed fell beside the road, and the birds came and ate them up. It's like, okay, I guess. All right. So now we skip down to verse 19. And now this verse 19 explains what verse 4 is. So now this is Jesus teaching his disciples what the parable means, what he's talking about. It says, verse 19, when anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in his heart. This is the one on whom seed was sown beside the road. Whew. So now let me read all of that. I'll read 4 and 19 together. And as he sowed some of the seeds, okay, let me back up just a little bit. I'm going to read a little bit of 3 as well. So behold, the sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seeds fell beside the road, and the birds came and ate them up. Now, when anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in their heart. This is the one on whom seed was sown beside the road. So obviously the seed is the word of the kingdom. So this is this life producing, this freedom, joy, peace. If I speak to you about this and you don't understand it, now we can get into understanding or not, and how that all is, but if you use it, if you take the word understand and maybe say applicable to your life. So now you hear the good news, the too good to be true good news. Okay, so you hear that. But for you, all it is just a weird story, a highly unlikely fairy tale. Well, you don't understand it. Doesn't mean that you're stupid. It means that the person telling you this was maybe not the right person necessarily to tell you. Now he could have been, she could have been, because there's a whole nother deal. We can way get sidetracked on that. We're not going to. But it says that they hear the word of the kingdom because it has been sown in their heart. And yet, when they don't get it, the evil one comes and snatches away. What? Yeah. Even though it's been sown in their heart. Hopefully that's not you. Okay, let's move on. Now we're going to read 5 and 6. That's the parable. Others fell on rocky places where they did not have much soil, and immediately they sprang up because they had no depth of soil. But when the sun had risen, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. Because they had no root. What? Let's see. Oh, the title of this one is Roots and Rocks. Huh. What a coincidence. And this verse right here is, but other seed fell in rocky places. And this isn't speaking of Jesus as the rock. It sprang up because it had no depth of soil. But when the sun had risen, they were scorched because they had no root, and they withered away. So now the explanation is in verse 20 and 21. The one on whom the seed was sown in the rocky places, this is the man who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Now, there's a lot of people like that. They immediately receive it with joy. Yet, he has no firm root in himself, but is only temporary. And when affliction or persecution arises because of the word, immediately he falls away. Is your Christianity like that? Do you hear the word? Do you come out of church on Sunday and it just jacked up? You're happy. You have this joy that is just like woohoo, life is good. But then something, life, the world, comes in and says, you don't really honestly believe that stuff, do you? You know they only say those things to get your money, right? How many Christians do you actually know that truly enjoy their life? That are actually happy? More than likely, the Christians that you know kind of have a sucky life. So you have all of these things. You have this bombardment. Well, when you hear the word, you receive it immediately. It's like yes, and you have joy in that. You have this crazy cool feeling. But because you don't have any firm roots, and what would a root be? Well, you can do it yourself, or you can have faith and believe that Jesus is your root system, which is a much better way to go. Because then, if you don't have Jesus as your root system, well, you hear a new understanding, a new word. This is the first teaching maybe that you have uh, listened to, watched of mine, and it's encouragement for you, and so you take it, but you only hear parts of it that are like, well, this is what you go, all right, well, this is what I have to do, and this is what I have to stop doing, which you should never, ever, ever get from one of my teachings. Because the thing about this life of Christianity is you have faith that what he has done is enough, and that you believe that what he has done is enough. That's it. Because otherwise, you get this good word, this too good to be true good news. You receive it and you're like, yes, that's what I've been looking for. That's what I want. Yes, yes, yes. Uh-huh. But you receive it with a foundation that you still have to earn it, and you still have to be good, and you still have to work to keep it. And you might be clean now. You just went through the car wash, the people wash. But as soon as you come out the other side, now you have to watch and make sure that the birds that are circling overhead don't drop bombs on you, and the dust that's around by your feet. And now you are responsible to keep you clean. Well, all that is you don't have any firm root. And so then you fall away. Okay, let's keep going. There's all sorts of fun stuff here. Now here's another. So now we go back to the parable again. Verse 7, it says, others fell among thorns, and the thorns came up and choked them out. Well, the teaching, what Jesus says about verse 7 is found in verse 22. And it says, and the one on whom seed was sown among the thorns, this is the man who hears the word, and the worry of the world and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful. Now, here's another one that we could really go off into the weeds, but we're not going to. One of the things that I would ask is that you not be a thorn to somebody else. That you're not a thorn to somebody else's seeds that have been sown in their heart. The worry of the world and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful. So it could still be planted and still grow, but there's no harvest there. Because you're too worried about your good works. How is your root system going? Rather than believing that Jesus is your root system. Hey, D! Ta-da! We're almost done with page 1. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm glad that you're here. We're in Matthew chapter 13. We just went through verse 7 and verse 22, talking about thorns and the seed that's sown. And I ask not to be, I would ask all of us not to be the thorns in somebody else's life. So now, roots and rocks. So we have these roots. The first one, they didn't even though they were sown in the heart, they didn't even get a chance to develop it all. And then the next one, they hit rocky ground, and because there was no root system, but there was just enough. The seed sprang up and it was like, oh, this is wonderful and great. But because they didn't have any firm root system, which is Jesus, not ourselves. Now you can do your own root system, like I said. I just don't think I believe there's a better way. And the better way is just relying on what it said in Revelation 22:16 that Jesus says, I am the root. So now I don't have to worry about digging my root system deeper. All I do is I have faith and I believe that Jesus is my root system. Now there isn't anything that can harm me. There isn't anything that could come along and pick me up and plant me somewhere else because my root system is Christ. And he says nobody will snatch you out of his hand. And then after that, we looked at the seed that fell among the thorns, and the worry of the world and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful. So that one has enough to have its own root system. And I'll even go as far to say that you could believe in some quasi way that you have the root system that is Jesus, but you still don't produce fruit. And now I'm not talking about good works and the fact that you don't sin, because that's just wrong, because you do fall short, you do miss the mark. But since Jesus has perfected you, since Jesus has made you whole, since we live based on his righteousness, all of that is irrelevant. Now we get judged and we get to live based on his goodness and his righteousness instead of our own. So don't be a thorn. Don't be a thorn to somebody else. It's just not a good idea. So now verse 8. So now we go back into the parable again. It says, and others fell on good soil and yielded a crop, some 100-fold, some 60, and some 30. Woohoo! Good stuff. Well, Jesus' explanation is found in verse 23. It says, and the one on whom seed was sown on the good soil, this is the man who hears the word and understands it, who indeed bears fruit and brings forth, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. This bearing fruit, again, is not you stopping sinning, you stopping from falling short. This bearing fruit is loving on that person. It is coming alongside of that person. It is not treating that person like the world treats them. And I'm going to include people that go to church as people in the world. Because I'm telling you what, if your actions against, not for, even though you say that you're doing it for the person, are against the person and the actions that they're taking, you're no different than the world. And you're really being, you're idolizing. Your idol is the God of this world. It's the way it is. Because if your actions are no different, if I treat you, if you come into my life, okay, and I treat you because you've done something bad, naughty, wrong, whatever, and I treat you no different than any other person out there that is of the world, profess to not be a Christian. If you get the same life from me that you get from them, it's not that they're doing something wrong, it's that I'm doing something wrong. That's the way this thing works. Because when you come into my life, whether it's for just a moment or for a really long time, how what you receive from me, from a Christian, should not, well, is not based on anything that you have done or are doing or might will do, whether good or bad. It's not based on that. Okay, I'll answer that question. Some of you are thinking, well, then what's it based on? It's based on what has Jesus done? So, you come into my life and you have we'll say a challenge that you are struggling with in your life. And you come into my life, I know what your challenge is. One of the things that I look at then is, did Jesus take care of this when he was punished? Did Jesus already receive the consequences for this action that you're doing? If the answer is yes, and you have a pretty high likelihood of that being the case every time, well, then I can't react as with guilt, shame, condemnation, because Jesus already took that for you, which is what the world will interact with you with. I don't even believe that I could come to you and say, you know, I love you, I care about you, but I hate what you're doing. Because to me, that gives that thing that you're doing way too much power and authority in your life. That does not treat it as though it is already defeated. And you say, well, it's not defeated because it's in my life, so obviously it's not defeated yet. We have to defeat this thing. Help me to defeat this thing. Lay an axe to the root of this thing. Not just deal with a symptom. No. How about I help you to understand that that thing that you're mixed up in has already been defeated. Because if it hasn't been defeated yet and you have it in your life, now it's up to you to defeat it. So then you don't need Christ. You can do it on your own. Good luck with that. I'm going to go with, nope, he's already done it. And if you want my, well, I ain't even going to say help. If you want my support is going to be in helping you to recognize that what he did was enough. Now when you have this in your life, you're no longer trying to overcome it. You're not trying to defeat it. You're not trying to kill it. You're not trying to unshackle from it, because it's already been done. All of those things have been done for you. That's the truth. So now it's your belief, it's your faith that what I just said is truth. Where's your root system? Is it your root system, or is your root system Christ? Let us move on. Oh, let's see. Verse 9. So we're still Matthew chapter 13. Verse 9 says, "He who has ears, let him hear." Which is an interesting statement, but it's because he's speaking um, to those that are not ready to hear this, not to receive this yet. Verse 11 says, Jesus answered them, "To you it has been granted to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been granted." So in your life, what side are you on? Are you living as one who it has been granted to know, or has not been granted to know? I've heard many a time, "Oh, we're not to know the mysteries of God. One day, when we get to heaven, maybe we'll know. But here on earth, nope, not for us. His ways are higher than our ways." All this stuff, what a bunch of hooey. That's only, well, and it's true. See, that's the sad thing, is that's a fact, Jack. Well, or Jane, however, when you're on that side of it. Verse 11 says, "To you it has been granted to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven." To you. He's not talking just about 12 people here. He says, "To you it has been granted to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven." But to them it has not been granted. So why do you keep living your life thinking that you're part of the "has not been granted"? You hear, and part of it is teaching, part of it is um, the fact that you believe that God's still mad, and it's just, that you have to stay clean, and there's a bunch of hypocrisy because there's, people that hold either, different positions that say they're holier than thou, but you really know that they're not so much. And so there's this crazy ickiness, and you're like, "I don't want to be a part of that." And I commend you for that, because you shouldn't be. And that's not Christianity. Okay, I'm going to keep going here. We'll see. Verse 13 says, "Therefore I speak to them in parables." Oh, see, that's so sad. Renee says that she knows a church that talks like that. And it's like, oh, It's just, oh man. Okay, verse 13. Therefore, I speak to them in parables, because while seeing, they do not see, and while hearing, they do not hear, nor do they understand. All right, verse 16. But blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear. For truly I say to you that many prophets and righteous men desired to see what you see and did not see it, and hear what you hear and did not hear it. So you have this, if it's not for you right now, what needs to happen in order for you to receive it? What do you have to do? And if you can answer that, I have to do this, not do this, whatever that is. If you have to take this action, because belief and faith are not an action. Might action come from them? Sure, but it's not. Faith is not an action. Belief is not an action. But I tell you what, from your action, I know your faith, I know your belief. That's a truth. But if you have the understanding that this isn't for you right now, well, what else needs to happen for it to be yours? You say, well, I need to die. Okay, we can take care of that. And how you die now is you believe, you have faith that Jesus died for you. Right? He was your proxy. He did it in your place. Just like if you own stock in a company and I do not, but you send me to vote, well, I go in your place, and whatever I say carries the same weight as if you were there yourself. So Jesus does that. So now if your answer is, I have to die, that just means that you don't believe that you've died with him. And if you don't believe that you've died with him, that means that you also don't believe that you have risen with him. And that also says that the punishment that he took, you don't get the benefit, the blessing that comes from not having that punishment. Now the punishment is gone. Now the blessing, the glory, the honor that he receives rightfully because of who he is and what he's done, you don't believe that that's yours then either. But it is yours for those who believe that what he did is enough. So good, so much. Let's just keep going. Oh, look at that. We're up to the one of the verses that I put for this teaching. Let's go to Romans chapter 11 verses 16 through 18. Oh, there's so much good stuff. Remember, you think you for yourself. Do you have roots that are yours? Or are your roots Jesus? Because check this out. So Romans 11, 16 through 18 says, if the first piece of dough is holy, the lump is also. And if the root is holy, the branches are too. What? If the root is holy, the branches are too. But if some of the branches were broken off, and you, being a wild olive, were grafted in among them, and became partaker with them of the rich root of the olive tree, do not be arrogant toward the branches. But if you are arrogant, remember, check this out, remember that it is not you who supports the root, but the root supports you. So what kind of root system do you have? What what firm foundation do you have? Oh, it's your foundation. It's one that you built, that you created, that you cultivated. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, good luck with that. Come on, Jesus. That's the root system. That's the better. That's the, if there was a right answer, that would be the right answer. If the root is holy, the branches are too. Are you holy? Yes. Because nobody's caught you missing the mark, falling short, sinning? No, that's not why. You're holy because your root system is holy. That's it. That's the only reason. Because if it were not true, if that were not the case, you would have something to boast about. Look at me. Here's all the good stuff I did. Here's all the bad stuff I did not do. So what? Good for you. That only matters if you're worldly. Just throwing that out there. Because heavenly doesn't do anything. Okay, 1 Corinthians 10, 1 through 4 says, For I do not want you to be unaware, brethren, that our fathers were all under the cloud and all passed through the sea. Now, verse 2, check this. Maybe it's someday, I mean, we've talked about baptism over the last 4.5 years. I don't believe I've added this verse in with the baptism, but check this out. Verse 2. And all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. What? Yep, that's what it says. It says it right there. All were baptized into Moses. I don't want to be baptized into Moses. Yep, I get it. You're better off if you're not. Jesus comes and baptizes you with Holy Spirit and fire. Much better option. Okay, let's see. Verse 3, and then on, 3 and 4. And all ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink. For they were drinking from a spiritual rock, which followed them. And the rock was Christ. Roots and rocks. Huh. All were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. So who are we talking about here? Yep, that's right. All the Israelites that were led out of Egypt went through the Red Sea. They had um, the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. Was it the pillar, the cloud, the yeah. They were thirsty because they were in the desert. So Moses is told to hit the rock. He hits the rock, and out from the rock spews enough water to take care of, I don't know, I think one of the numbers I heard was about 3 million people for 40 years. Let's see. And then they didn't have any food, so they had the manna. So this manna came down out of heaven, right? And they would gather it every day, just enough for that day, and they didn't keep any over for the next day, except for the day before the Sabbath. Then they could gather 2 days, and it lasted the 2 days. But on any other day of the week, if they gathered more than just one day's worth, by the second day it was all rotten and wormy and just icky. And so it's just crazy that the same stuff only lasted that one day, but the day before the Sabbath, you would gather enough for 2 days, and it worked. And some that gathered little, it was enough for them, and some that gathered an abundance, it was enough for them. It wasn't too much. So they all ate the same spiritual food. They all drank the same spiritual drink, for they were drinking from a spiritual rock which followed them. And the rock was Christ. So I like that. The rock was Christ. So that was the other chunk of verses for this teaching. Roots and rocks. Do you have your own root foundation? Do you have your own rock foundation? Or is your root system Jesus? The root supports you. You don't support the root. If the root is holy, so are you. By default. All right, let's get in this last chunk of verses. We're going to go to Matthew chapter 7. We're going to start all the way back up into verse 15. Now, I do have it all the way through verse 29, but let's pick out this dealing with the root system, the rock. So roots and rocks, plural, because you could have your own root system, you could have your own rock, or Jesus. So Matthew 7, verse 15 begins with, beware of the false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will know them by their fruits. So now I'm going to stop right there. When we hear that, typically the teaching will be if they sin, that's bad fruit. Well, that's just wrong. The fruit is not sin. Or what would be the opposite of sin? Righteousness? We'll just go with good fruit is doing good, bad fruit is doing bad. And then you have to just define what good is and what bad is, because what's bad for you might actually be good for me because I live a whole lot worse life. And so you kind of graduate from really ugly to still bad, but not as bad as what it was. So where is that bad and where is that good? It's it's not good. You know, you could look at it and say, I don't have a job, so a paycheck that gives me, you know, a job that pays me $100 today, that's good. I'll take it. And you have somebody else that says, well, no, it has to be $1,000 for today in order for it to be good. You know, somebody else that goes, seriously? Psh, uh, we need to bump that up a bit and it needs to be 10 grand. Otherwise, it ain't good. And so, good, bad, you go, well, Todd, you know, stop playing semantics and um, you know good, you know bad. No, ain't gonna stop. I said ain't. Just saying. Probably not the first time, and I'm pretty sure it won't be the last. All right, let's just read this. So, you'll know them by their fruits. So, think back to the Romans one. If the root is holy, then the branches are too. Huh. Okay. It says grapes are not gathered from thorn bushes, nor figs from thistles. Are they? Well, our answer is no, I don't think so. Not sure I've seen a fig tree, but doesn't sound right to me. Okay. Check this out, verse 17. So every good tree bears good fruit, but the bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot, I repeat, cannot produce bad fruit, nor can a bad tree produce good fruit. So if I pause right there, if your root system is holy, if your root system is his righteousness, what is the option for the fruit that you as a branch will bear? Should be pretty easy. It has to be righteousness, holiness, goodness. And that's not pressure. It is not, oh man, well, there's a standard to live up to that I'm going to fail at every day. That's not how this works. Because again, how much pressure, how much effort does the branch do? It doesn't. It's there. The root system provides the nutrients. And in these verses, like right, Romans 11:16 says, if the root is holy, the branches are too. And at 18, it says, remember that it is not you who supports the root, but the root supports you. So verse 17 and 18 says, the good tree bears good fruit, the bad tree bears bad fruit. The good tree cannot produce bad fruit, nor can the bad tree produce good fruit. So if your root system is you, know where I'm going? If your root system is you, what fruit? I know some of you are like, well, I can still produce good fruit on your own. Huh. Maybe we should find that verse that says, even your good is like filthy rags. James 2, verse 10, I believe it is, that says, if you fall short in the least of the things that you should be doing and not doing, if you fall short, if you come up just shy, you are guilty. Sentence pronounced. Guilty of all unrighteousness, all bad. That's right. You cannot produce good fruit without Jesus. So, Jesus is your root. That's what he tells us. Revelation 22:16, I, Jesus, am the root. And if he's the root, and it says in Romans that the root is, if the root is holy, then the branches are too. So if the root is righteousness, then the branches are too. If the root is good and holy and pure, without blemish, without spot, without wrinkle, if that's true about the root, what does that say about the branches? It has to be true about the branches too. It's the way it works. Again, not pressure that you need to do this. Because if you think you are holy and good and all that because of the stuff that you're doing or not doing, you're still with a root system that is not Christ. Okay, verse 19. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. So then you will know them by their fruits. Again, this is not, did they sin or did they not sin? That fruit, that is not fruit. That is sometimes that person doing life the best way they can, the best way they know how. And for them, it may very well be the best, because I think it is. It doesn't mean that that is right for you, because if it was, then you'd be doing it too. But for that person, at that time, it's right for them. Some of you can look at your life and go, I'm doing the same things and I'm not doing the same things that I was doing and wasn't doing 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 80 years ago. And other people say, thank God I'm not doing and not doing the same things. I was yesterday, last year, 5 years ago. See, we don't look at people that way. Because for them, it's right. In this time. Because God says so. You go, oh no, Todd. I'll show you many verses. I'll fight you to the death to tell you that God says very plainly, this is wrong and you should not do it and all of this stuff. We can have a conversation about that. I would very much enjoy that. And I'm not a debater. What I rest on is what Jesus did and who he is enough. So now what are you trying to prove? Only that he's not. That's the only, when you take that stance, that's the only thing that you're attempting to prove is that what Jesus did and who he is not enough. Good luck with that. Because that is a bucket that is all full of holes that isn't going to hold water. Let's keep going with this. It's so good. Verse 21 says, "Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven will enter. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? And in your name cast out many demons? And in your name perform many miracles? Then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness." I did a teaching on these verses, what is the will of my Father and all of this. This little chunk here, just understand that depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. The only way you're practicing lawlessness is by practicing the law. I'll let that roll around in your noggin for a while. If you don't practice the law, you cannot be lawless. Just saying. Okay. Here now is the verses that speak to the rock. Amen, amen. Come on. Oof. Verse 24. Therefore, so now I just read. So, because of everything I just said, everyone who hears these words of mine and acts on them. Pause. All right, hit the pause button. What was action? What was stop sinning in any of the verses that I had just read that was right above this? Well, there wasn't. It was even, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name cast out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? That, in some circles, is a really good day. I very much love it when I prophesy, when I've dealt with casting out demons, which is a realm that you do not want to mess with. When I perform, in your name, I perform many miracles. I can tell you some stories. Man, great, great things. All that's good. But he says, well, I'll declare to them. And he's not grouping everybody that does that. He's saying, you who practice lawlessness. So, therefore, you've got a good tree cannot produce bad fruit. A good tree cannot produce bad fruit. D said, do tell us some stories, please. All right, let's finish this, and maybe I'll just hit a few of some of them that that come to mind. They do try and cast out demons. See, it's not a realm to mess with. there is I it is way far too dangerous of a realm to mess with um, when you don't know what you're doing. And some people are very arrogant and say that they know what they're doing. And it's just it's not gonna be it um I I guess I don't know the people. I mean, I know some of the people there. Um, with the people that I'm familiar with in that organization, now it has been a little while, so I can't speak to them today as of who they are today. So um, I say this with some understanding, hopefully, that things definitely can change because I'm not the same person I was 6 months ago or 6 years ago. But with the um, with dealing with casting out demons, um, it's far too dangerous for the person attempting to do it, as well as all of them around them. And sometimes it doesn't actually help the person. And there's far fewer demons um, than what some would make you believe. So that's all that I'm saying with that. It's just it's not a good realm uh, to play with. I've had some other people talk to me about that, and I'd highly advise them not to because they weren't ready for it yet. And I don't. I would love the opportunity to uh, talk with some. Oh, absolutely, Dee. That's the one of the challenges with it is you expose yourself to that realm, and what is it? The seven sons of Sceva, whatever they get their tails whooped because they're dealing with the spiritual. Most people have a hard enough time dealing with the world. So if these people, I would think that it would do the opposite of what it is meant to be. Yeah, there's if I tell you, I would love the opportunity to talk with the people that are dabbling with this. Um, the challenge is that um, more than likely the people that are messing around in that realm will probably have more challenges in their life than what they would have had they not delved into that realm. Hey, brother Don, thanks for tuning in, man. Um, so yeah, it's a challenge. So let me finish these verses here. So we're Matthew 7, verse 24. I said, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and acts on them. Again, this acts is not dealing with sin and not sin and that whole stuff. It's having your root be Christ. because the root is righteous, that means so are you. Okay, back to the verses. You may be compared to a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell and the floods came and the winds blew and slammed against that house, and yet it did not fall, for it had been founded on the rock. Everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act on them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain fell and the floods came and the winds blew and slammed against that house, and it fell. And great was its fall. When Jesus had finished these words, the crowds were amazed at his teaching, for he was teaching them as one having authority, and not as their scribes. So we build our house on this solid foundation of the rock of Christ. Because I can be a rock, you can be a rock. Unfortunately, some of you are your own rock. You rest on your own understanding. You rest on your own knowledge, the knowledge that you've gained on your own. You live your life based on, so you've built your house based on your own root system. Because understand in these verses, in verse 25, the rain fell, the floods came, the winds blew. Well, in verse 27, the rain fell, the floods came, the winds blew. Same thing happened. Life happens. The deal is, when you are your own foundation, well, you built it, you're compared to the person who built the house on the sand. You have no foundation because it's you. You have your own root system. So now it's up to you. And now you try to drive it deeper. You try to do more things and not do more things, not do certain things, to help advance your root system to be able to have this greater, better, stronger. Well, it's still just you. And you really suck at doing life the way that it should be done. Sorry, that's just the way it is. Now, I love some of you a great deal. I do love all of you, but I love some of you a great deal. When your root system is you, it doesn't matter how good you are because you still are worthless and poor and bad and a filthy rag. Because by stumbling at one point, you're guilty of all unrighteousness. But when you have the rock as your foundation, what did it say? Where was it? 1 Corinthians 10, at the end of the verse 4, it says the rock was Christ. Huh. And in Revelation 22:16, Jesus says, I am the root. If the root is holy, so is the branch. And you're a branch. So now you live this life with him as your foundation. Now, he is your righteousness. It's not like you stole it from him. He freely offered it to you. And you go, yes, thank you very much. I will set mine aside and live life with your righteousness instead of mine. I believe that is meek. That is meekness. It's not weakness with a W, it's meekness with an M. Because now I've set this aside to grab a hold of something greater. I've set my own aside to grab something better, stronger. So, with that, I did tell you that I would just throw a few things out there that have happened in my life that come to mind for me to say. I won't say many of them, but on more than one occasion, I've had spines straighten to the point that the person can tell that they're taller because they see things in the room from a different perspective. Uh, I've had somebody had a spine issue that was causing them to buy like the industrial bottles of like ibuprofen, and it was just eating them like M&Ms. And after prayer, uh, they went down to what an average person would take. So that it didn't completely get rid of it, but it was a great deal better. Um, there is so much more. I have given words about um, somebody being pregnant um, before it was announced that they were, and I talked to somebody when I was out of state about some stuff that was going on in their life, and so there was accuracy with some prophetic words with that, and let's see, um, what else did it talk about here? Casting out of demons. I've dealt with that as well. There was one point. No, we're not going to do that one. Okay. Um, it. All right. I'll say this one, and then I'll wrap this up. Um, it was me and two other people, and I was dealing with a spirit that was in one person, and the other person in the room thought to themselves, you know what? I think it'll just be better if I take this spirit. So that's what happened. So the spirit went from this person because I dealt with that person, but then it left that person and then it went into, it stayed in the one person, went to the other person. Now both of them have it, but I dealt with the one. And then about a week later, the other person called me. Todd, I just got to tell you, I did something that was pretty stupid. So then what did I get to do? I got to deal with it with that person, but that one was over the phone. The other ones were in person. But see, it's just something that we should not just mess around with. Do you have the authority? Yes, if you understand it. Do you have the power to deal with it? Yes, if you understand it. The challenge is the spirit realm knows better than you do if you believe that you have it or not. So don't mess around in that realm. It's just better not to. You cause more problem. You and I'd tell you stories about spirit running into spirits and them going, oh well, yeah. See, you're just a Christian, so here's how I will act because you don't know what's real and what's spiritual, and so if I can just bluff my way through this, and then you'll just leave me alone. Oh, so much with it. But getting back to this, So there was a little bit. Um, yes, there's there's so much with this. When we open up this, um, when we go down this direction, there there is a great deal that it just can't be covered in just a couple of minutes. And so for those that have the foundation, which unfortunately isn't very many, that Jesus is your root, Jesus is your rock, that Jesus is your foundation, that is where your life is hid. That it's not up to you, that you get to hide, you get to rest, you get to have peace in Christ. For those people that believe that, and I would imagine that I could probably count them on one hand. For those people, you don't have to worry about it because darkness does not overtake light. The problem is that most Christian believers don't have that as a foundation. And when you don't have that, the only other foundation you have is yourself. And that's where you open up an ugly can of worms. So, with that, I will say thank you very much for watching, for commenting, for giving the reactions, for sharing the video. I'm continuing to, uh, once I have this, then I continue to put this teaching onto YouTube. So the YouTube channel is Unshakable Foundation, and so you see it here on Facebook, but it is also on YouTube. And I've been pretty consistent with getting that. Once I do the teaching, to get them on there. I do want to go back and get all of the other teachings that are on here onto YouTube as well. But for right now, I'm calling it a win that I can get this teaching. So each time I do one, I get it on there. So with that, I thank you for the encouragement, and hopefully you've been encouraged by this teaching. Hopefully you can take this teaching and apply it to your life. Grow in your relationship between you and God. Have a better understanding of God's relationship, how he interacts with you in your life right now, and how you interact with him and how you interact with other people. Oh, yes, and amen. So, with that, I say thank you for watching this, listening to this whenever you did, whenever you do. I appreciate it. And we'll be here next week doing another teaching. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.